Well, hi, folks, and welcome to Here to Talk with Chrissie. This is also called the one-stop shop for getting unstuck. And I defy anybody out there to tell me they've never, ever been stuck in their life. But we hope through all the interviews we're doing on here to hear from people who were stuck, who have got unstuck, and from some of the people who have helped them. So just by listening to this, something you just might think, right, this is the day for getting off the sofa or whatever. So I'm very pleased to welcome Kalin Fan Villain, who is a psychosocial counsellor. And she has a great deal of expertise in helping people who are stuck on drugs. They may have become ill through that and harmed themselves, perhaps with TB or HIV, and she's trained in helping them with that. So, Kalin, hi, and thank you very much for joining me. We're going to talk in a minute about how you do help people, because it's a wonderful thing you do. But I'd like just to ask a bit about your life, first of all, particularly maybe as a child growing up, because some of the people we've talked to had a history of taking drugs, but they overcame and went on to help others. So, but were you a drug taker or not?
I was not a drug taker. I grew up in a house. I grew up in a house where there was about three of the males in the family which were close relatives, but I never took substances when we stayed together, I never had an addiction problem to say. It was substance
So how
use
many,
disorder.
right. So how many years were you around people taking drugs?
So it becomes in and out, but it's basically since the age of, let's say, 8 years old to high school. So throughout my schooling career, but within that it was family, so would still always be around, sleeping over and those type of things, or they would stay with us in our home when we moved out eventually. So it's in and
Because,
out throughout my life.
yeah, people who grow up with drug takers or alcoholics often talk about the kind of chaos around them, because you never know what's going to happen next.
Yeah,
Was that you?
that was part of it. I think, I mean, it impacted me even later as an adult, where did have major anxiety and issues with kind of general anxiety, and just because of the chaos and the things that I've seen, where I felt like too young to see, and just the unpredictability of it all, fights, things going missing. That was very much in the household. I have a
So I
story
think,
actually of, I'm sorry if
no, go on.
but I know as a child there was a Christmas, and we got like Christmas clothes, because we would do every year Christmas clothes. And when I went to go look for my Christmas clothes, it was gone. The same with, we have like in high school, here we have a matric ball when you finish in high school. And I wore it for that night, but when I went later to get it again, it vanished. It was
So
had
someone
been sold.
they sold the stuff for drugs,
Yeah.
and that was a pretty common thing. That happened a
Mm.
lot, did it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Phones,
So,
anything really that would generate some sort of form of money.
yeah.
Mm.
So I think people are interested because before you became this counsellor, well, in fact, you were a volunteer to start with, and you studied. Tell us about that interim period. Did you actually leave the drug takers, the chaotic house, in order to get better, or what? Did you have to stay there throughout?
No, eventually. So I was in high school, and we left, but we were still involved. I think so. Like I'm saying, they were always involved in my life, but I think I did take a step back when it came from moving out. It was easier to manage the engagement between us and the relationship by being away. Yeah.
Okay, but I think it's important to know how you had the courage to move out. Were you talking to someone in counseling? Was somebody advising you, or was this just you?
It was something that fell upon us as a family because of our situation that we were in, that it had to be that way. And I think as and my parents and us as a family decided that we cannot have living in the chaos anymore. And we had to separate ways. And that is basically a decision that was made as a family that we're going to separate ways because of the negative impacts that it was having on all of us.
Did they stop taking drugs at that point?
Who?
Your family?
So my parents never also took drugs. I think maybe that's also important. My parents were never, but no, so it would be my uncles and grandfather. They did not stop. They still using till today.
Right. Well, a lot of people would say that was pretty courageous because you didn't have loads of money. So
No, we
when you
didn't.
did leave, where did you go?
So we moved out of the area. We sold the house and we moved out of the area and just further away from the house.
And you decided at that point, did you decide to help other people with the drug problem, or were you studying for something else?
Interestingly, that's a very good question because so I also fell pregnant when I was 19. So didn't study or anything until that age. Um, but I never wanted to go into substance use. I thought it was too close to home. I was like,
Yeah.
I don't want to be in this industry. I don't want to be around it. I've left it, and I love my family, love my uncles, but I don't want to be. And I wanted to be a teacher. And I started studying and and it just came so naturally to me. And then I volunteered at TBHOV care, and it was just seeing that the the harm reduction and the engagement, and that's when I decided this is actually a career for me and this is where I would like to be. I think I had a advantage because as much as I was not a substance user myself, but because it was around me and quite prevalent in the house, um, I knew how to engage. I knew how to handle. I knew the tricks, the trade. I knew all of those things. So there was a reliability on me because I wasn't, but also empathy that I had because I've been around it, and an understanding because I've been around it.
Right. Well, I think some people would have gone the other direction, like you say. They'd have said, "Oh no, can't stand any more of that." But you
Yeah,
decided to do something about it.
yeah. It was. I think it almost like I found my place and my purpose. Um, and it almost made, I don't know, but I think it somehow made my past make sense, or what I've experienced make sense. And I could use that to kind of help others and be that person for someone else.
So somewhere along the line, pretty quickly, because of your background, you you were yet again reminded that you can't change people. Only they can change themselves. Do you think you had more patience with them than people who hadn't had your background?
I do think so. I think also because when you experience it firsthand, I think there's different types of experiences when it comes to substance use. There's this experience of the person using and people with lived experience, but there's also an impact that it has on the family. And when you've also seen the help and the support that a family has given someone, and yet it's still hard, and you can see that person struggling, does put a different impact on how you engage with
So
it.
you went from a volunteer into what you are now, which is a very impressive job, a psychosocial counselor. So
Yeah.
was that an easy move from being a volunteer?
No, it was not. It took long. It took quite a few years. Look, I think that's always in perspective. But I started off as a volunteer, and then I became a peer. And then I was a peer for probably 5 years. And then eventually became a counselor. Was doing other courses in between and trying to kind of give myself the skills to go out there and do it. Especially in harm reduction, it's not something that you learn easily from school. It's more kind of organizations from all over the world that train you basically in safe injecting and those type of things. So it was a long journey before. And at the time I had a kid, so it was also, that's what also made it hard, because having a being a peer compared to being a psychosocial counselor while having a child. So it's the income and all those differences. It's a long journey.
Sure. Well, you call a peer, do you someone who meets someone on equal level, or what's your definition of peer?
So for us, a peer is basically somebody with lived experience or similar lived experience, and that person has engaged and can engage with clients with the same experience. So peers like friend, but in our field, it's basically someone that has lived experience or similar to lived experience of the people that you're going to give services to.
So a bit like a mentor.
A bit like a mentor, but the person doesn't necessarily have to. The s- that's where it's a bit different, because a mentor walks that journey with you and helps you do the changes. Where your journey, just you give education, not kind of teaching and mentoring. It's more like, this is how you inject safely. This is how you to create less harm for yourself. Teaching those type.
I was going to ask you, so you were helping people to know about the dangers of TB, HIV, illness, all sorts of things that
Yeah.
they were facing or may already be in. Uh, is it fair to say you weren't trying to be a counsellor at that point? You were just helping them get sick, helping them not get sick.
Yes, that's where the kind of giving education on reducing the harms and the health implications for themselves. So there's a lot of education around HIV, TB, hepatitis as well, all the bloodborne STIs, those type of things. So it was educating them to, if they want to make better choices, to this is where you can start.
So you didn't sort of start with the opening line, look, if you go on the way you are, you're going to get sick. You, you have to go in
No.
very gently, don't you?
Yeah. And it's the harm reduction is about meeting the client where they are at, and like I said, not be non-judgmental. So it's recognizing people have choice, and with that comes in, when the client comes, is seeing where they are at, and if they are not at that, with not fearfully telling them, just telling them, look, there's lots of negative impacts. This is all that can happen to you. Don't you think maybe if you do this, it will help your situation? And whether they make that choice to do it or not is up to them, but it's a starting point. And a lot of the time it leads to, um, okay, I'm making a better choice for my health. Now I need to make a better choice for my living situation. Now I need to make better choices maybe for where there's less harmful impact on me for my mental health, and it usually leads over. Yeah.
So tell us about some of the success stories. I think you must have got to the stage when you thought, I can only do this if I can see something positive happening around me. It's pretty demoralizing having people endlessly who cannot make that change in their habits, in their thinking. So you must have found people who were prepared to.
Yes, I think everybody that engages with the project or with me is coming there and is already starting to make this, that is already on that step and wanting to see. So I would say that all of them that comes there, the start off is all success, because that means they're saying something there. But I think one of the things, I can say family wise, because like I told you, my family was on the program, on a needle syringe program and a methadone program, and as much as they didn't stop using, the relationship, because we always say kind of it's the opposite of addiction is not sobriety, but there's a video that goes around that talks about connection and how connection keeps people kind of sustain them and maintenance wise. And I think that's those are one of the success stories, because I can say being with that person, starting off needle syringe, going on into a maintenance opiate substitution therapy, um, has allowed for connection and support from family, because the needs are not as intensified on the methadone. When it comes to family functions or things like that, it's more trusting, which means that we are more able to spend time together, and that has an impact. And that also comes to clients that have come. We have clients at the moment that we meet them where they are at, and they're still living on the street, but they're extremely adherent to their medication. By our support, they are taking their medication daily, and that is so helpful. So they're already making these small little steps that are successful. And that happens all the time. I've had someone with alcohol, um, and what we started off with harm reduction tips. Okay, alcohol harm reduction tips, because the insight to the issue was not as aware. There wasn't self-awareness. And then we moved, okay, no, okay, that's not working. Let's try some medication with a doctor. We keep it outpatient. That's not working. As you can see, you're still having a lot of negative impacts. You're still not coming to work. You still having going through scenarios where you've had physical harm on yourself because you were intoxicated. Um, and now we're at the point where the patient has said, or the client has said, no, I think we need to do inpatient, because clearly what we've been doing has been helpful, but I'm ready now. I think inpatient is what I need.
Well, I wanted to ask you about that. So you talk about inpatient. Um, I think a lot of us all over the world, because there are people watching all over the world, have heard of rehab, which for many countries is very expensive, quite out of the
Mm.
question for a lot of people.
Yes.
What kind of inpatient treatment are you talking about?
I'm talking about rehabilitation, yes. So we have quite a few government ones, and then we have a few private ones. The waiting lists are very long for the government ones, and that is where I find that the harm reduction approach helps, because you can wait sometimes up to 6 months before you actually. But now, what does that person do that is now wanting to make those changes? What do they do in the interim until that time comes and until they allow? And that is where we work on small little goals of changes that they want to achieve for the week or for the month or for the 3 months. And we look at that and we evaluate every 3 months, and we say, okay, this is not working. Let's try something else until they get into the rehab.
Well, and people watching in the UK and the US and Australia and so on, they're all in the same boat. There's just not enough
Yep.
money on the state.
There's
So
not
there
enough
is this,
money.
it's longer than 6 months in many countries, which,
Mm.
as you say, is very tough because people can slip back in that time.
Mm. Exactly. And that is where the harm reduction approach allows for those little, even though I'm even though there isn't this, here's still a resource for you to use. Here's still tools for you to use that can help you. And we're still supporting you without judging you if there is a use involved, but just supporting you throughout that. If you still want to use maybe if you want to cut down, let's look at how we can do that. And when you do use, why did you use more? What made you use more this week than you did last week?
Well, I was going to come on to that because it's all in the mind, really. And we've had a psychologist come on, and there is a huge mental health
Mm.
overtone to people turn into alcoholics or drug takers. And one of the things people say to me on these sort of interviews is, yes, AA and NA and
Mm.
groups like it, very useful because you have a mentor and you stop. If you're lucky, you stop because you keep going to meetings and saying you're going to stop. But nobody's able to dig down into the roots of why you drink or
Yeah.
take drugs because that's so important.
Yes, and I think it's an ongoing journey. I don't think you just decide one day you're going to go into rehab, or you're just going to stop doing the substances and think, oh, it's done. I think it's an ongoing journey because it's deep rooted. You've been using this coping mechanism for so long. I think one of the things that I see very commonly, so they would have maybe the substance of choice that there's an issue that they cannot have control, and then they work on that and it stops. And then, especially when they come out of these treatment centers or smaller, but now okay, so now it's not methamphetamine anymore. Now it's alcohol. Now it's not alcohol anymore. Now it's gambling. So that speaks to the issue that had and the deep rooted mental health issue when it comes to substance use. Because as much as we're telling people you need to stop and stop this, but there's gambling, there's food, there's all this. So those behaviors can go into that again, not finding that root cause.
So this series, Here to Talk with Chrissie, we call it the one-stop shop for getting unstuck. So I think it's interesting. I'm going to go on using that word stuck because when people get heavily addicted, they're stuck. They don't know how to get out of it. They don't know how to move forward. They don't work. They don't do anything much except think about that next fix. And how do you help them to get unstuck in their thinking?
So that is where, when you build a relationship, and that is where peers are important and people with lived experience or similar experience. I think that is the start because you're building a relationship with someone. You're not just giving them a service. You're building a relationship, you're getting to know them. And that's when you can have real conversations with them. And then you build a therapeutic relationship. So I think it's very important to, when you're giving someone a service that is in substance use, to build a relationship with them, and that helps them become unstuck because now they have a way to go. You forming that connection with them, and you're giving them, because I think society shuns people that use for whatever reasons, and instead of saying, "Oh my word, you're struggling," let's see what we can do, how we can support you. We say, "Oh no, let's put you in a room or in a cell where you just need to sort your stuff out by yourself." So that is where, so that building relationship almost brings that person somehow back into, oh, I'm a human in society and I can function in society.
Yes. And
I'm still relevant. I'm not just an outcast.
because it's so important to feel, it's
Mm,
called self-esteem, to feel there's something
mm,
good in you. We had
yeah.
a psychologist on, and he was, you're talking about the relationship you build with people and how important it is. And he was talking for those people who can afford him as a therapist. He couldn't emphasize enough how important the building of that relationship is, because
Mm,
for the first time in people's lives, they have someone they can trust. And I
yes.
think it's the same with you.
Yes, definitely. And someone that they can trust, someone that they can go to when they're in a crisis, and someone that they can rely on and it's consistent. That's there. Because I think a lot of the times, especially when looking at people who live on the street or people that using substances, there might not be a consistent person that is supporting. It might be in and out. And I think that is also important when it comes to, so that there's that part as well.
So if you could wave a magic wand to help people get better, what would you say to governments who, as you say, shun people who have got addictions? They don't really want to help them because they think they can help themselves. And it's difficult to explain to a government, a health minister, they actually can't help themselves, which is why they're in this state. What would you do to improve that situation?
I think it starts with decriminalizing substance use and making it where people are not treated like criminals because they're using. Because substance use or addiction is a symptom. It's not something that it's a symptom of something else. And I think as states and communities even, we treat it like it's the antagonist, it's the problem, it's you are the problem, you have a choice in this matter, you are, and yes, choice is there. I don't want to take away choice, but we also teach people by teaching people, oh, you are the problem, you can't control. You're saying that they don't have control over their use. You're taking away that self-awareness and that self-esteem, because you say, yeah, because you're on this, you are a problem and now you can't control it because this drug is so evil. But we know there's lots of people that use substances where they don't get stuck in that. They don't, their self-esteem is high enough that they feel, I have control over this use. I don't have to get. And for most part, when people get into a cycle of addiction, or cycle of using, even where they're binging, it's usually when there's other issues underlying as well. Yeah. So I would
Yeah.
start, when it comes to that, I would say talk about decriminalization, and even maybe not even decriminalization and going to that extent, because I know a lot of people think, oh, that's scary. But just having not treat people like they are criminals because they're using. We even have, and it's all over. I know this is an issue all over, where people have criminal records because they were 5 years ago. They were maybe criminalized and picked up by the police, and now they have it on their record. And now that was 5 years ago for possession or using. And now you can't get a job because 5 years ago you had possession of illegal substances.
So if you did decriminalize, you decriminalize all drugs and, well, drinks, okay. I mean, you can still get locked up, but basically it's drugs, isn't it? You're talking about all drugs. Would you
Yes.
decriminalize?
All drugs, yes. And I think, look, it's not as simple as just decriminalizing all drugs. I know there's a lot that goes into it, but I know if when we look at harm reduction, it's been done in Portugal and it's been done somewhere else. But the money that is put into the policing service and the police force, and actually the criminalizing people that use drugs. The same amount of money could be put into healthcare facilities, rehabilitations, and I think we might have a different outcome in terms of long-term managing of substance use.
I fear that you may well be right, but I don't think governments are prepared to take that step. Uh, they're seeing as if they're condoning it. You know what I mean? Not
Mm-hmm.
accepting that these people don't have a choice, and they don't want
Yeah,
to be seen to be condoning drug taking. So it's quite rare you find a government across the world who would take your view, I fear.
definitely. But it has been done. I think
Hmm.
I mean, if we look at it now, America, UK, Canada, the Netherlands, all over the world that they've been, even in Africa, even in strict African countries, they have needle and syringe programs. They have safe using sites because of how it impacts the healthcare system and how they've seen the difference in when people are treated humanely and treated with dignity and respect, and they have access to service, compared to the punitive approach of criminalizing them and outcasting them. So there is little changes where they don't want to say that it's that, but they are starting to change because they see the benefit as well.
But at the end of the day, it is this light bulb moment, as they talk about, when the person decides, no more, I'm going to stop. And it's difficult to actually say what can make that light bulb moment come about.
Yes. And this is where I think, and this is where harm reduction, I'm not just for harm reduction. I'm for any, and there's the misconception that harm reduction is without abstinence. It's abstinence is the less harm that the person gets. So we would want that. But I think people are very complex. And some people, that moment for them is religion and or their beliefs. Other people, they need abstinence to be able to come over. Other people, they need it to be a bit slower. They need to look at the root cause and go through all these trials and tests and looking at themselves in that way to where they can go use. So I think all these approaches, it's not saying let's not use the other approaches. It's just saying let's understand that people are complex and we need different approaches for different people so that we can have a bigger impact.
It's so true. I think what you've done today, and I thank you so much, Kalin, is you have given hope to somebody who's listening in another part of the world who is stuck on the sofa ready for another fix. And you're
Yeah.
saying that there is a way. It doesn't have to be as bad as you think to change, to get
Yeah.
your thoughts worked out. That's very helpful.
I hope it does touch some, because it doesn't. I think we always sometimes think of, if we want to be unstuck, it has to be this big revelation, or this big move that we have to do in our life, where we can also say the small ones also count, and the small ones help change our the way we're thinking as well. It doesn't have to be a massive big, oh, let's do this now. It can be making a choice of using not sharing a needle. That's a choice I'm making that's better for myself.
That is so helpful. Thank you, Kalin. Thank you very much for being with us. You've been great, and I think you have encouraged people and given them hope, you know? Thank you.
Thank you very much for that.